In my previous episode, I focused on discussing the thyroid and how it plays a significant role in our hormonal balance. I will return to this discussion, and I also will talk more about sex hormones and what happens if there are imbalances. As one of our words in the word combination sex hormones suggests, they affect our sex life. Did you know that millennials and Gen Zs are reportedly having less sex than any generation on record? Even with all the dating apps and social media, young people are connecting less in real life. And in Japan, over 40% of young adults say they're still virgins, and many just aren't interested in sex at all. I recently came across an interview by Stephen Bartlett with relationship expert Esther Perel. She said, "We're living through a kind of sexual recession. It's not about libido as much as it's about loneliness and disconnection." Esther articulates it beautifully. Social atrophy is directly tied to sexual decline. We're losing the ability to approach one another, to build the kinds of friendships that organically lead to romantic bonds. And when there's no connection, there's no partner. No wonder young men are showing up in sex therapy, not after a prostate issue, but in their 20s. Many are struggling with erectile dysfunction not because of age, but because of isolation. They're consuming porn, they're alone, and their bodies have learned to respond only to their own touch, not to a partner's presence. Esther calls this ambiguous loss. You're physically with someone, maybe sitting next to them on the couch, watching a TV, but emotionally, they're not there. They're scrolling, nodding, not really hearing you. It's that eerie feeling of being alone while not alone. I've also found myself in such a situation, doing this. We all do it. Esther talked about how for connecting to thrive, we need what she calls clean time, undivided attention, where the phone is down and the multitasking stops. She urges people to pause all their roles and simply be with someone. That half an hour of connection can be as powerful as any supplement you take, she says. And I believe it, because oxytocin, the bonding hormone, doesn't come in pill form. It comes from being seen, heard, hugged, from feeling safe, from co-presence. This is the podcast Eel Zebra's Transformations. I used to be an eel zebra. I was prey, but I committed to transforming into a lioness who lives without feeling guilty about how nature created her. Transformation involves detaching from decades of conditioning, and it requires doing things differently. So, I am podcasting to keep track of my progress. If my sharing helps someone else, I see that as a win for everyone. But now, without further ado, let's get started. In the last episode, I opened up about how hormones have shaped my identity, moods, and health, and why I believe we should think carefully before intervening hormonally, especially in young people. I also introduced the thyroid as a key player in our hormonal balance and shared insights from Dr. Elizabeth Bright and Dr. David Brownstein about iodine diet and what really supports long-term health. I concluded by saying that I'll continue exploring hormones and supplements, especially iodine, and share differing expert opinions, including one that challenges what Dr. Bright and Dr. Brownstein believe. In this episode, I'll reference Dr. Sabrina Salt when discussing matters from the medical and biological standpoint. Dr. Salt is an expert in fat loss, anti-aging medicine, and sexual health. You will hear what her opinion regarding supplementing iodine is. But first, I want to let you know what she says about sex. I'll conclude on the note that I started this episode on, namely by referencing psychotherapist Esther Perel, and I'll also share some insights from Drs. John and Julie Gottman. They're researchers that have been studying couples for over 40 years, publishing over 200 academic journal articles and 46 books. But let's start with Dr. Salt. She echoes Stephen Bartlett and Esther Perel in that there's a growing tendency of many men and women to have a low sex drive. As the main causes, she names blood flow and hormonal imbalances. There's a third one, which is nerve conduction, but the first two dominate. As regards hormonal production, it dramatically declines as the person ages. The reason is not just aging per se, but also what we do daily that harms our hormonal health. Toxins in our food and cookware, makeup and body products. Exposure to certain toxins can negatively affect testosterone levels. People lose testosterone, which is the main hormone responsible for the libido, in both men and women. I searched the internet asking why people lose testosterone. Testosterone levels naturally decline with age, typically starting around age 30 to 40, with a gradual decrease of about 1% per year. They can also decline due to medical conditions, for example, conditions like kidney or liver disease, inflammatory diseases, and certain autoimmune diseases, due to obesity and metabolic syndrome like diabetes, due to certain medications including opioids, steroids, and some antidepressants, due to excessive alcohol consumption, poor diet, and lack of exercise, due to chronic stress that can elevate cortisol levels, and due to insomnia and other sleep disorders that can be caused by high cortisol levels. Estrogen, of course, also affects libido, particularly in women, while progesterone makes us relaxed, which is needed for getting in the mood and being able to perform, explains Dr. Salt. Estrogen has about 500 functions in the woman's body. Most of those functions don't go away just because a woman reaches menopause and her ovaries stop producing estrogen. With insufficient estrogen, women are less protected against Alzheimer's, osteopenia, and osteoporosis. The body realizes it needs to make up for estrogen deficiency, so it switches to a different estrogen production process called aromatization that occurs in fat tissue. That's why many women can rapidly put on weight around the midsection when they hit menopause. It's not from too many calories. Their bodies try to correct for what the ovaries no longer do. Dr. Salt says the only way to help with that is to get more estrogen into your system, and that's what I have done. If we keep our bodies thinking that we are in our 30s or 40s, we will not lose our libido and will benefit in many other ways. Blood flow was the second factor Dr. Salt named as an important factor when we talk about sex. If there is poor blood flow in men, they can't get engorgement and maintain an erection. It affects women too, but slightly differently because women are more responsive. Dr. Salt says we, women, need a stimulus to respond to. It makes more blood flow in the erogenous zones. The more blood flow, the more plasma goes to the mucous membranes and creates lubrication that's needed for penetration. The third factor that can influence it, according to Dr. Salt, is nerve conduction. We need nerve signaling telling us to perform. Both men and women need this to function adequately. We have the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The parasympathetic system is the rest and digest system. This is when men can get an erection, and that's why men have erections in the morning. Women also can't get arousal when they are stressed out. However, to orgasm, we need to switch to the sympathetic nervous system so we can get the heart rate going up, have an intense arousal sensation, and prepare for climaxing. Antidepressants and alcohol can dampen this mechanism. Dr. Salt, who is also on the carnivore diet like me, says the diet definitely plays a role in sexual health. She shared experiences similar to those that I had after going carnivore. This diet makes you calmer and more relaxed, she says. Just like me, Dr. Salt used to struggle with anxiety, and she thinks that after she went carnivore and removed plant toxins, her body could relax. Dr. Salt says she's observed in her practice and read in the literature that the carnivore diet helps men in sexual health by improving hormones and blood flow. It fixes the damaged blood vessels and works like magic. It will also heal those valves that need to be able to lock shut in order to have an erection and hold the blood in place. Men more often have a problem maintaining erection. Having an erection happens at a later stage of dysfunction. Dr. Salt says that small changes in diet can cause big changes in testosterone levels. If we can cut out bad foods, start moving around, and start doing some weightlifting, it can increase the testosterone levels by a couple of 100 points in men. Usually, doctors see erectile dysfunction starting when the patient's testosterone levels hover between 200 and 300. Optimal levels are between 9 and 1100. Yet, if you heard episode 14 where I talked about hormones, the accumulation of fat and insulin resistance, you'll remember I also said that women have testosterone too. And in women, low testosterone can mean low libido. So if you are a woman and struggle with this problem, testosterone therapy might be worth considering. Since I finished the last episode with a promise to talk more about the recommended supplements, Dr. Salt says she takes an oyster supplement. According to her, oysters are the sex-boosting superfood. They have a lot of minerals in them in perfect proportions, but if you don't have an access to oysters daily, an oyster supplement might be a good solution. Just like Dr. Elizabeth Bright and Dr. David Brownstein, whom I mentioned in the previous episode, Dr. Salt also supports supplementing iodine as well as selenium. Dr. Salt explains how iodine affects libido. Even though it specifically helps the thyroid health, knowing that all the endocrine organs work together, there is signaling from the thyroid to the sex hormones, cortisol levels, and adrenals. Without your thyroid functioning properly, you can't be in good shape. The thyroid has a lot to do with your metabolism, your mood, body temperature, and sexuality. A lot of people are deficient in it because their diet is deficient. Even if you are on a carnivore diet, you can still end up with those deficiencies. So Dr. Salt supports supplementing as needed. She explains things in a way that makes sense to me. Any level of micronutrient deficiency or even macronutrient deficiency will make your body think that it is in a starvation state, and you will hold on to the excess fat and experience various symptoms. Your body can also store excess fat due to hormonal dysfunction, usually when certain hormones are not in balance. The primary culprits are cortisol, insulin, and estrogen. The thyroid hormone is a secondary hormone. Another reason why you might not be feeling good and unable to lose excess fat even on a carnivore diet might be because your body is storing toxins. A lot of toxins are stored in fat. An interesting fact that I learned from Dr. Salt is that our bodies will store heavy metals to try to correct for mineral deficiencies. When you take enough of the necessary minerals, your body will flush out the toxic heavy metals. People who lose fat rapidly may start to feel worse because those toxins are released in the system before they come out. This makes sense to me. From other podcasts, I have also learned that sometimes we don't get to fully use the supplemented sex hormones the way we hoped, because they, just like toxins, can also get stored in fat tissue. There was an interesting testimony from a man named Feringo Freedom, who was on a carnivore diet for 1,000 days. Before he started, he was morbidly obese and supplemented testosterone. As he lost the excess fat, his cholesterol levels, kidney function, and blood pressure improved, and he no longer needed to supplement testosterone. I'm guessing his testosterone previously trapped in his fat tissue was released and used favorably afterwards. The other supplements I hear most recommended, even on the carnivore diet, are magnesium, vitamin D, even in summertime if you spend most of the time indoors, and vitamin B1. Dr. Salt also recommends selenium, but it can be overdosed, so levels need to be tested. And she emphasizes the importance of chromium, which is in oysters, and the oyster supplement her company produces from high-quality oysters sourced from Ireland. An interesting opinion I learned was about vitamin C15. It was shared by Dr. Stephanie Van Watson, a veterinary epidemiologist who studied dolphins. Dolphins are carnivores, so they shouldn't have metabolic dysfunction, right? Wrong. The scientists noticed that older dolphins also had insulin resistance. Then they treated dolphins with vitamin C15, and dolphins' condition improved. That led to this expert developing a high-quality C15 supplement. This vitamin C15 supplement is for humans who struggle with metabolic dysfunction and autoimmune conditions such as certain pains, despite being on the carnivore diet and taking other recommended supplements. Dr. Van Watson claims that she feels its powerful positive effects. You can hear this fascinating interview on the Primal Podcast episode 118. But now I'll share something I promised at the end of the previous episode, an opinion about iodine that contradicts the opinions of Dr. Elizabeth Bright, Dr. David Bernstein, Dr. Sabrina Salt, Dr. Ken Berry, and others whom I've heard while learning about the carnivore diet. I listened to an interview with Dr. Alan Christiansen on the Melanie Avalon Biohacking podcast, and I learned that he warns against supplementing iodine. He says Americans have been growing up eating foods that contain iodized salt, which should have supplemented enough so that there are no deficiencies. To quote Dr. Christiansen, the simplest way to think about it is that high-dose iodine blocks iodine. Dr. Alan Christiansen has also published a book where he explains everything in detail. It is entitled The Thyroid Reset Diet and can be bought on Amazon. I'll read a fragment of a description of this book on Amazon. Dr. Alan Christiansen helps readers reverse chronic thyroid diseases like hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's thyroiditis with nothing more than dietary change, the reduction of iodine intake, backed by new research showing that proper dietary iodine intake can start to reverse thyroid disease in as little as 4 weeks. His diet plan contains the optimal amount of iron and dietary iron to control thyroid hormones, effectively resetting the thyroid. This made me puzzled, so I re-listened episodes where Dr. Elizabeth Bright and Dr. David Bernstein were interviewed, and I noticed something I didn't notice before. In the very last minutes of the October 2023 interview given by Dr. Elizabeth Bright to Rina Aluwalia, the host of the Primal Podcast, Dr. Bright quickly added the following: I have to say one thing, because people will ask me about this. People who have an inflamed thyroid may overreact to iodine, so if you are overreacting to iodine, you are either toxic with halides or your thyroid inflamed. This definitely got me thinking. I hadn't noticed that sentence before, even though I have heard that episode several times. Now, even though I'm going to stay on a carnivore diet, because I still believe in its positive and healing effects, I understand we need to be extra careful when it comes to supplementing. The best route, of course, is getting tested to see if we have any imbalances or deficiencies. But if testing is not accessible to you, educate and observe yourself. There's so much good information on the internet and in books nowadays, and I'll also continue sharing what I have learned. But to wrap it up, I'll return to where I started from. Something that affects us no less impactfully than diet. It's our relationships. During the interview with Stephen Bartlett on his podcast, Drs. John and Julie Gottman shared some eye-opening truths about sex, intimacy, and the role of simple gestures like kissing. They reference the shocking results of a study they conducted over 40 years. Men who kissed their partners goodbye before leaving for work lived, on average, 4 years longer than those who didn't. That's not just cute, it's biology. That oxytocin doing its thing, calming the nervous system and deepening connection. They also talked about the 6-second kiss. A kiss long enough to trigger a psychological shift, not just a peck. It's a gateway to bonding, a reminder that touch is more than foreplay. It's the glue of daily love. But it's not all roses and cuddles, of course. The Gottmans pointed out that many couples stop having sex not because of lack of attraction, but because touch and affection have disappeared from daily life. As John put it, every positive thing you do in a relationship is foreplay. If fun dies, adventure fades, and touch becomes rare, so does passion. Julie made a powerful point too. Many men have been conditioned to see cuddling as infantile and only accept physical intimacy through sex. But that mindset creates disconnect. As she explained, she says she's not getting enough affection. He says they're not having enough sex. They're speaking different languages of intimacy, and both are missing the point. What's the takeaway? I guess that life is foreplay, and you shouldn't just expect it, you should initiate it. Emotional safety is sexy, and when we understand each other's histories, including trauma, including generational wounding, we create space not just for sex but for true intimacy. When asked, Esther Perel, whom I referenced in the intro part of this episode, said this about identity when asked by Stephen Bartlett if men feel emasculated by successful women. Emasculation is a word that doesn't even exist in the feminine world, nor does loser, really. These aren't just words, they reflect how masculinity has been historically fragile, always needing to prove itself. She didn't dismiss the tension. She agreed that some women out-earn men and that can create friction. But she challenged the way we've let it divide us. Instead of men versus women, she offered something more human. In her retreats, Esther has all the men sit together and talk, really talk, about their fears, doubts, and longings, while others, their female partners, simply listen. Without judgment, just presence. And that's when things begin soften. Esther says, humanity is bigger than gender. Gender is important, super important, but there is another layer that is just our humanity. And that's the layer I want to keep reaching for in my own life and here with you. Because the quality of our relationships really does shape the quality of our lives. You've been listening to the podcast of Ilse B. If you like what you hear, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed, followed, liked, commented, and shared. If you want to learn more about me, my causes, my products, and my services, please visit my website, ilzeb.com. That's ILZEB.com. Disclaimers. In this podcast, I talk about mental and physical health and what has helped me to heal. Nothing that I say should be regarded as medical advice. If you have any medical condition, consult your doctor. Also, I'm an artist and storyteller. I'm sharing my stories because that's what artistic people do. Take it as fiction and as a form of my art. Even though I may sound as if I'm recalling events from my past, I don't confirm they actually happened. And if they did, I'm not blaming or accusing anyone, nor should you. I take all my life lessons with gratitude, trusting that they are given to me to expand my soul.